There are three types of movie watchers. There are the normies, the people who will go to the theater to watch Avengers, but that's it. And their favorite film is something like The Princess Bride. There are the pretentious art heads who will gawk at you when you say you like the Michael Bay Transformers films and only watch crappy abstract ones like The Holy Mountain and call it genius. Then there are the people who actually understand what makes a film amazing. And those people like movies such as Surf's Up or Megamind. There's also a last group of people who watch The Office or Friends, except they don't really watch it, they just put that on while they're scrolling TikTok or Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, something like that. How's it going, BFDers, and welcome back to another video. You're probably asking yourself what relevance that intro has to this video, and believe it or not, I'm here to tell you what that is. That third group, the one that really matters, has a tendency to bring to light some forgotten films, like Over the Hedge, that people in my age range, the people that watch video essays, remember fondly. Not only are they remembered fondly, but a lot of times there's evidence that they are in fact good films. Not always, however, because I think today's film is one of those. One that people remember leaving a strange taste in their mouth, similar to that of a carbonated diet soda. Shark Tale is not a film I think about often. It doesn't exist within the modern animated zeitgeist like Kung Fu Panda, Shrek, or, again, Surf's Up. When you think of a list of films that you might show your future children, you may not even remember that this one exists. I was challenged by a fan of the show 3 years ago to talk about this film, back when we were Al Pacino's Prison Scene podcast, and I have forgotten for too long. Until one day it reappeared in my life when it was on Netflix's top 10 charts, ranking as number 1. For those of you who don't know, Shark Tale is a 2004 animated film that was a result of the spicy DreamWorks and Universal team-up with an all-star cast including Will Smith, Robert De Niro, Jack Black, Angelina Jolie, and none other than Martin Scorsese. Martin's role was not a small one. He was a driving force in the film. It would seem like the producers of this film were banking on a huge success, and then they got that bag. The film opens with the DreamWorks Moon Kid, rest in peace, casting a line into the ocean with a worm that's flesh specifically reminds me of that precursor Shrek clip that was released semi-recently. A large shark looms over the worm, and instead of eating the worm, he tries to save him. This odd shark, voiced by none other than Jack Black, reminds me of Leonardo DiCaprio from What's Eating Gilbert Grape. And by that, I mean he sounds retarded. And he might be. Frankie, his brother, pulls up and starts slapping him around. They swim off, and Frankie hums the Jaws theme song, and Jack Black, Lenny, states that that song creeps him out. We travel down the reef and we are introduced to Fish Hollywood. I don't remember the exact name, but that's exactly what it is. No one is around until Katie Current announces that the sharks are gone, and then all the little fishies come out. Much like Cars, Shark Tale takes everything that exists in our world and transposes it on top of their fish world. However, unlike Cars, Shark Tale doesn't change how that personified world operates. The sea creatures simply operate and live like humans, except for whales. They go through a whale wash. Also, all the fish have human teeth, which is strange. But what I want to know is, how does this world and the human world coincide? Who cast the line with the worm? There are tons of human references right out of the gate. Things like Hollywood stars with names like Muscle Crowe and Jessica Shrimpson. There's also a problematic joke about two fish painted like taxis that are very blatantly Indian. Don't you yell at me, my mother is your mother, okay? A shop called Eels, Eels, Eels. And my favorite a sushi restaurant run by a Japanese fish. I'm beginning to wonder how all of these things got into the film, and they probably did not age well. Speaking of car wash, let me introduce you to our hero, Oscar, a generic fish that works for Martin Scorsese at the Whale Wash, who lives probably in the ghetto and is currently auditioning for the MTV Cribs show, whatever the fish equivalent of that would be. He pulls up to his Whale Wash job where his unrequited lover, Angie, is waiting to be courted. Oscar does not court her and instead hard friend zones her. I gotta say, I do not know what is wrong with Oscar. If Angie was trying to say what's up to me, Mr. Sykes, the Scorsese fish, Oscar's boss, is meeting up with the head of the shark family, Don Lino. So Don Lino has a pet piranha fish tank. I don't know how that works. Does that make them slaves? Maybe? This conversation leads to the firing of Mr. Sucks, which means that now Mr. Sucks has to pay Don Lino for protection. Back at the Whale Wash, there's a big clean going on, and the inside of a whale's mouth looks rather disgusting, full of a poorly rendered mucus-like substance. There's an accident while Oscar is complaining about how he is disappointed with his life trajectory, and Oscar, without a second thought, is willing to get in harm's way for another coworker. Mr. Sucks calls up Oscar and pulls out a weirdly specific diagram about how Oscar is at the very bottom of the food chain and reminds him that he owes him 5,000 clams, and then hands him over to the Jamaican jellyfish twins who subsequently beat him up. For whatever reason, probably because she loves him, Angie takes care of him. Oscar describes his dream of being somebody. He states that
nobody loves a nobody.
He makes this statement after a flashback that involves his father working at the Whale Wash all of his life, and Oscar expressing how much he loved his father even though he amounted to nothing greater than what he was. This is a very interesting concept and adds a lot of depth to his goal in the film by adding complexity to the true motivation behind his actions. Angie tells Oscar that he doesn't need to be a big shot to be somebody. Oscar laments, but Angie offers a pink pearl, a valuable gem that started from a grain of sand, a small dream that became beautiful. She is a keeper, and it's unfortunate that Oscar doesn't see this yet, but if he did, there wouldn't be a love interest and probably not a film. And this is basically the end of the first act, and throughout most of the first 17-ish minutes of the film, the transition between scenes has been rather flawless. One action has led to another, and all of the characters who will have a presence in the film have a motivation. These all wind together to create the plot. Lenny doesn't like being a shark. Oscar doesn't like being poor. Mr. Sucks needs his money, and Don Lino is trying to raise a suitable heir. Because sharks exist, the fish are afraid. Because the fish are afraid, the sharks control the water. Because the sharks control the water, a hero who defeats the sharks will be praised. Because the sharks are defeated, they will seek revenge. Holy crap, this film might be genius. Shark Tale is setting itself up to be a near flawless film, technically speaking. Again, some of these textures were a bit off-putting. The next scene involves Don Lino talking to Frankie and Lenny. Don Lino says that killing is in a shark's nature.
You see something, you kill it, you eat it, period.
Earlier, I said that Lenny might be regarded, but honestly, I think that he might be the smartest shark out of the bunch. Instead of submitting to his base instincts like his brother, Lenny wishes to be something different. He understands the value of life and other things, which is deviance in the eyes of the Don. Back to Oscar the next day. He's headed out to meet Mr. Sucks at a seahorse race instead of some low-key place, and of course, Oscar being Oscar, decides to bet all of the money that Angie's pearl provided him. After Oscar proclaims that he's gonna be rich, a Sigma fish Lola, who is not attractive, makes Oscar goon. He got a taste of that tea, and now he's ready to fight a war against Great Britain. Unluckily, the seahorse he bet on, Lucky Day, tripped underwater.
Lucky day is down!
Who in the halibut trips underwater?
That halibut line suggests that all of these fish are sentient and understand that they are fish and not humans. At least that's how I interpret it. Sykes blows up and sicks the Jamaican jellyfish on Oscar. They tie him up and leave him to be shark food. Lenny and Frankie pull up, and instead of Lenny eating him, he pretends to, and it almost works. After seeing that Lenny can't do it, Frankie takes matters into his own hands, or fins, rather, and some dope-ass video game music plays before Frankie gets bonked on the head by an anchor and then dies. Naturally, Oscar takes credit, and now he is somebody. And he's got everything he ever wanted. Don Lino, on the other hand, Finn, has lost everything. Angie heads to Oscar's new bachelor pad, and he is living large. All of these new friends around him. She gives him a little lava lamp, and Oscar puts it next to the one that literally spans the entirety of the penthouse vertically. Like Odysseus' tree, basically. They go out onto the penthouse balcony, and they look out to see everything that's been left behind. He's on top of the reef now. Oscar gifts Angie her grandmother's pearl, with interest, and it's clear that she doesn't really care about that, but is more interested in spending time with Oscar. Unfortunately for her, Lola slides in and steals him away. Keep in mind, earlier when Lola met Oscar, she explicitly said, "I am shallow and will only be with you for your money." Oscar, being flawed and in the moment, ditches Angie, but is immediately stopped by random fish number 3 yelling that there are sharks in the reef. After a momentary lapse in his facade, Oscar tentatively exits the penthouse in search of said sharks. Who else would Oscar run into but Lenny, who is running away from sharkdom? He begs Oscar to hide him, but Oscar selfishly refuses. The young blood gangstas, aka the kid fishes that look up to Oscar, reveal to Lenny, while he's like hiding in the corner, that Oscar is in fact the shark slayer. Lenny, if you recall, was there and knows that this is not the truth, so he blackmails Oscar, which leads to Oscar giving in and letting him stay at his old crib. Lenny comes out as a vegetarian, a vulnerable moment, if I do say so myself. Oscar does some consoling, and Lenny reveals that his father is none other than the Godfather. Oscar freaks, and we do a cool transition to the Jamaican jellyfish playing a video game and referencing some sort of Konami code, which is a real cheat code in the tie-in video game where it makes you immune to damage. This is occurring while Oscar's newfound world begins to crumble around him. Mr. Sucks is on the phone sharking Don Lino, and in the corner, very suspiciously, Lola waits to seduce Oscar. He manages to escape her claws, fins, and behold, Angie, who is in the company of Lenny. Lenny likes Angie, as he rightly should, and spills the beans. Angie's response to this, directed at Oscar, is, "Did you think you could slay a shark and everything will be fine and dandy for the rest of your life? Of course he did. He was blinded by the light." Lest we not forget, Lenny wants to disappear. A genius plan is concocted between the two at the dismissal of Angie, and the show goes on. A fun, quirky little battle between Lenny and Oscar goes on with a funky pop cover playing in the background. Oscar finishes Lenny off and throws out some common movie lines to scare off Luca the octopus and his octoposse away. He leaves them with a warning, saying,
"We are here. We are waiting."
Sorry, wrong movie. Oscar calls him Don Nemo and tells the gang off. Back at the old crib, the trio is hanging out. Lenny and Oscar reliving the good old days, while Angie is steaming and is jelly, but quickly things heat up. Like a cheese fondue machine, the cat is let out of the bag. And there it is. The dark fish of the soul. Angie has revealed her feelings. And much like Oscar, I would have no idea if a woman was into me. Before the shark, Oscar was real. He had a life and friends who cared about him, but it wasn't ever enough. He wanted more than whale washing. He wanted more than Angie. At this point, even though he has everything, he is more lonely than ever. And in typical DreamWorks fashion, we get an edgy montage exploring the world in its new state. In his penthouse, surrounded by his friends, he breaks up with Lola, who in turn beats him up. Realizing that he loves Angie, Oscar goes to the whale wash to confess, but finds that she has in fact been fish-snapped by the mafia. Lucas says if you ever want to see Angie again, you'll meet up with the family. Oscar fishes up and goes to said meeting only to find that he has been betrayed by Lola, who all of the old sharks are desperately in love with, including the farting one. Lenny, convincingly dressed as a dolphin, swoops in and eats Angie, proving that Oscar ain't no joke. Except it all falls apart when Lenny spits out Angie along with a few other interesting items. Don Lemo's reaction to this is probably warranted, confused as to why Lenny would do something like this, and enraged at Oscar for killing Frankie and lying. Don Lemo starts the chase, and some scrimps from earlier show up ready to fight. After Limbo gets nibbled on, he chases Oscar to the whale wash, where he is subsequently captured. Oscar does in fact capture 2 sharks this time, and the crowd surrounds him like paparazzi. After being overwhelmed, he yells to the crowd and confesses. This leaves everyone stunned and baffled, confused by these transgressions. But with Don Lemon trapped in the whale wash, Oscar fishes up once again and confronts him about his treatment towards Lenny. Don Limgrave apologizes to his son, and then they're cool. Just like that, the world is in a better place. Also, he tells Angie that he loves her, and that just works out because he's nobody without her. Everything wraps up in a neat little bow, with Oscar becoming the manager at the whale wash and the reef being safe. Shark Tale is not an inherently complex story. It's a story about a guy who wants to be something more than he is, and takes the easy opportunity when it arrives without considering the consequences. As a result, he loses everything, only to realize he had it all from the start. The idea of the story can be done without it being underwater. I think this is clearly apparent when Oscar takes an elevator up to his penthouse instead of swimming. Earlier, I made a comparison to Cars, describing the design of the world and how in Shark Tale it was lacking. I'll make another comparison to Godzilla -1. That film is a story about humans, but designed to have Godzilla in it. Godzilla is crucial to telling the story about our main characters. Good stories that are unique require a specific character and setting. Shark Tale isn't that. However, I do think in this case that could be considered an advantage. Shark Tale isn't a serious film. It isn't trying to express a deep theme, and the inclusion of fish heightens the comedy. Without seeing representation of real life, Shark Tale would have been an incredibly bland film with no personality. It sits in the uncanny valley, towing the line between fantasy and for reality. The blatant references act as a diving board into the world of Shark Tale. Do I love this film? No. Do I think it deserves a place in the Hall of Fame when it comes to the forgotten films that were actually good and I will show to my children because they are the last bastion of child-friendly animation that can be loved by everyone? No. But it is a piece of cinematic history that should be remembered merely for the fact that someone thought it was a brilliant idea to have an incredibly star-studded cast voice a film about a fish who wanted to be more. The only film that has Martin Scorsese and Jack Black in it together. There you have it, folks. Shark Tale. Yeah, it's worth a watch. I'd even pay $2 at the thrift store to pick up a copy and then put into my library. Shark Tale is a forgotten film, and may stay that way forever. But if you are one of the lucky few who remembers it fondly, welcome to the club. If you found any value in this video, drop a like, so the algorithm can feed me into the machine. If you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe and leave on that notification bell, so you know when I upload, because I do that often. Also, leave a comment on your relationship with Shark Tale, and leave any suggestions below. I've been Jake, and have been at least since last Thursday, and I'll see you in the next video. Shark out.